Nostalgia is something that I ponder a lot as I get older. I've obviously got way too much time on my hands, but I think it's such a sort of layered emotion of experiences. Some are vivid, some half forgotten, and probably some are embellished in our minds. The band that you never got to see live, how good you didn't look in that army surplus jacket when you were 17. A long lost lover, summer road
I
trips,
miss that
friends lost.
jacket a lot.
Yeah. The gig that ended in a riot, things like that. I'm just going to read out some lyrics from a song by the Buzzcocks called "Nostalgia." About the future, I can only reminisce. For what I've had is what I'll never get. And although this may sound strange, my future and my past are presently disarranged, and I'm surfing on a wave of nostalgia for an age yet to come. So nostalgia for today, knowing that it's not going to last forever. Future nostalgia, kind of seeing a band for the first time in a small venue, small basement, buying the t-shirt and anticipating that a future generation is going to do the same as you. And I think I'm of a generation, I'm probably old enough, certainly, where I'm seeing, music cycles almost sort of reinvent themselves, come full circle, younger generations liking the same music that I liked when I was their age. So I'm kind of seeing this connection with my past memories, some good, some horrible. That'll be Britpop. I'm only kidding. But there are some songs I can't play because the memories are too hard. But that's kind of life, and that's the beautiful power of music. The songs of Jeanines make me feel like I'm flicking through, like a photo album of my life, and their songs very infrequently clocking over 1 minute 30-second mark, which is totally perfect by me, and it makes it all the more remarkable that they fit in, such addictive, poignant melodies and harmonies to really sort of perfectly craft the songs. And you should really check out their upcoming third album, How Long Can It Last, for a sort of perfect 13 track listing. So with no more nonsense from me anyway, it's a pleasure to welcome Alicia and Jed to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. It's really good to see you.
Thank you. Love being here.
It's actually Alicia, but
sorry, Alicia. Sorry, I apologize.
Okay.
I'm sorry I interrupted about the army jacket, but I was literally yesterday wishing I still had that army jacket I had when I was in high school.
Do you know? I went to get one. I was born in the north of England, in a sort of smallish town. It's grown a lot, but it was smallish at the time. And they had like a kind of like an army and navy store where they'd have the sort of surplus equipment. And I remember going down there. I really wanted one, and it just didn't properly work at that time. I think I was maybe 14 or 15, something like that. And I wanted it to work so much, and it just didn't.
Well, I think I felt like I looked good in it. I was like sort of a punk teen. Maybe I probably look more like a skater than like Johnny Rotten or something. But But now I'd probably look like Travis Bickle in it or something, and that wouldn't be good. That's increasingly a bad look, I think.
Yeah, I remember just what I mentioned about sort of short songs. I don't know if you ever heard this. It was an interview that Tommy Ramone gave, and he said we play short songs for people who don't have a lot of spare time. And I thought that was just brilliant. I mean, obviously the Ramones are my sort of favorite band, but I just sort of love that. And if that was in like 1977, I wonder what it's like now, because people seem to have so little time to concentrate. Attention spans have gone out the window.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And sorry if you were about to say something, Alicia, but another thing I was thinking about yesterday, because I saw someone post about it on, I don't even remember the social media platform, but they're saying like, why don't we have 3 to 4 minute songs anymore? It used to be at least 4 minute songs, and I think this is a fairly young person, maybe in their mid late 30s, whatever. But so I think they were remembering like the 2000s where there were like a lot of long songs, and I think that had a lot to do with like shopping, like marketing, like sort of background music. That sort of a lot of popular music has become background musicized, to a certain extent. So it is interesting talking about like shortening attention spans. Because there's sort of a parallel line to that, which is like, are you even ever paying full attention to the music you're listening to anymore? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I certainly agree with you on that. I think I even noticed it with myself. I used to read a lot more, read books a lot more, and you'd be able to concentrate a lot more. And we just before we came on, Jed, I was talking to Alicia about about the library, just sort of briefly. But that's just kind of reminded me, about reading, that I find it much harder to concentrate for any sort of time period.
Yeah, it's difficult. You're always like, maybe I should check my phone now. And you're like, no, you don't need to check your phone now. Like,
yeah, Alicia does
so
read a lot still, though. I've gone through long periods of not reading and then reading a lot and stuff. And I've sort of started to read a good amount again in the past couple of years, but past few years.
But I don't remember. I don't remember a lot of what I read, and I don't know if that's related. But
yeah,
things that enter my mind don't in terms of media consumption don't necessarily stay there. So that can be frustrating. But what can you do?
I was I have the same thing. I feel I don't want to get sort of unduly depressing, but I like one thing that sort of worries me as I get older is losing my memory, and it's sort of in my family. And so I was talking to somebody about retaining information, and my friend said, no, it's just the volume of information that we're kind of surrounded by these days. The amount of information that's coming in compared to, I don't know, like even 10 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just so much more, and you can't possibly expect to retain that information. Sometimes I think I should be able to, remember remember things like when I was 30, and there's absolutely no way that I could do when if I'm being realistic, just no way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'd finished.
Yeah, I mean, I think something I've been thinking about for years now is the idea that we might have a sort of new form of existential dread, which is related to the sheer volume of content that we're exposed to on a constant basis. Because I think about it sometimes, and I get this real pit in my stomach about, like, I can't even be that articulate about it. There's something terrifying about just drowning in a sea of content, a lot of it fairly meaningless. And I don't know.
I think that's it. A lot of it is meaningless as well. In fact, I was reading. I can't remember who it was. There's an organization called Institute for the Future, based in somewhere in California, and one of the people that works for them, she said one of the things that we really need now is as a skill is critical ignoring. So basically, kind of sifting out what you don't need to think about, what you don't need to spend time thinking about.
I like that idea a lot. I'm gonna have to write that down. Critical ignoring.
Yeah. So let's so if we maybe talking about the new record that's coming up, and however deep you want to go into. I'm just thinking about what was going on in your lives that kind of inspired and informed the writing behind it.
Yeah, well, I do most of the lyric writing, like at least 90%, I would say. Whereas Jed does a lot more of the production, and like composing, or like part. You know what I mean? I come up with the songs in their like origin, and I write most of the lyrics. In any case, yeah, I think in this record, like for some of the songs, I was trying sometimes consciously to like write more from to like mine like memories and like past experiences. And then also, I guess the songs were written over a period where there were like a lot of personal changes. Like I moved to Western Massachusetts in 2021. And was in a few different relationships, some of which ended poorly, or just like dramatically. And so sort of trying to write through some of the intense emotions that engendered, and sort of like trying to like I'd say, and like also trying to like examine my own self and my own motivations, and my own part in like things that happened to me through these lyrics. And then other songs are just sort of not about anything, but
just whatever sort of comes.
I mean, sometimes when I'm writing a song, I'm just looking for like any phrase to like work off of that pops into my mind. But sometimes I'm trying to work from a specific place. Whereas I think when I first started writing songs, like the songs on the first album there are a few that are like still about me or about specific things, but like fewer, I would say.
There's I won't be too specific about it, but there is one interesting thing on this album. There is a song that essentially Alicia wrote the verse pre-chorus for, and I wrote the chorus, and where they're kind of a statement and a reply to that statement about the two of us, which was sort of accidental but sort of came about. So it's kind of a conversation which was just sort of emergent. Like we needed a chorus for the song, or I insisted that we need a chorus for the song. So I wrote one, and then it kind of wound up being, that's actually exactly an answer to what the song is about, and it's sort of about us,
Wow.
So that was kind of a funny thing that happened, especially since usually, I might edit a lyric here, there, here, but like mostly the lyrics are hers, or I might suggest something, but
it's like kind of like sort of some sort of telepathy was going on that you could almost,
I guess,
I mean, it's pretty.
It's like pretty. The chorus of that song is pretty direct. It's not like oblique, but I wasn't thinking like until after I was like, oh wait, this is just sort of like I wasn't thinking of that, but clearly that's what it was.
I would say we also wrote those chorus lyrics together. Like, I know that you came up with the very last line, and like I think you probably came up with like, but I think even that the writing of those lyrics, like we were in the same room, and you were like, "What about this?" And I was like, maybe not that. What about this? And so that was like a conversation within a conversation.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Go on, yeah. So I mean, how easy has it been for you to kind of work together on the songwriting? Because I always think I think when kind of bands get together, the different personalities that that are involved, and I know some bands write very, very collaborative, or let's say write, but kind of come together very collaboratively. Others kind of almost thrive off some tension within the band. I mean, what makes it work for for you guys?
It's pretty easy for us to like make music together in general. Like we don't have conflicting, like we'll disagree about certain things, but we don't disagree about like bigger picture how we want the songs to sound. Like part. Jed likes the songs that I write, and I sometimes resist his like suggestions, but ultimately like he is like he's been doing music for like a very, very long time, and has a very like innate sense of what works and what doesn't work. and he does come up with like most of the parts, like definitely all the drums and most of the bass lines. Obviously the bass lines are kind of memorable. That's pretty much Jed. And yeah, I mean, as we've gone along, like I've become more confident in like making suggestions, like, no, that doesn't sound quite right. But, yeah. So the question was what? It was, how do we,
I've no idea.
Yeah. What's our dynamic? Jed, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. So basically how it works is Alicia has like a demo.
Not a demo. Like a voice memo.
On a voice memo, yeah. Acoustic guitar and vocal. She'll send it to me, and then we'll get together and I'll pick up the bass and we'll sort of sort out the song. I'll come up with the bass line, and maybe some extra guitar stuff, or we'll talk about harmonies. Maybe I'll have harmony idea, and we'll talk about lyrics, and sometimes I'll be like, I don't like that, and sometimes she's like, well, I do, and then she'll be like, yeah, that's okay. Let's change that.
Sometimes we don't talk about the lyrics. Sometimes it just, yeah. But anyways, overall, that's correct.
We have consensus. Alicia, you mentioned about making suggestions, that you got more confident making suggestions. Is that I'm assuming from that's not always been the case?
Well, this is like the first band I've ever been in, and I didn't even like know that I could write songs until like my late 20s. Like Jed really encouraged me to try doing that. And so, and I grew up playing music, but like classical music. So like I've always been like, I would always like read sheet music, and there was like not any, I wasn't encouraged at all to like make up my own stuff or like improvise like without sheet music. So my brain, like I really struggled to wrap my head around like, how do you make something out of nothing? And sort of trying to do stuff by ear, like, and I feel like, oh God, I lost my train of thought. But
yeah, I could. While you're thinking, I can interject there.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about. I was asking about when you said that you feel confident now to make suggestions. You didn't always feel like that.
So I started off like very new to everything, and I know that like Jed he can basically hear like a whole piece in his mind already like formed, and I don't really have that capacity, but over time I've become more confident, like when I hear like what he has in mind or like what he's put down like provisionally, I will sometimes be like, no, that doesn't sound quite right. So it's not like I don't always have something in my mind to start with, but like when I hear what Jed is working on to, for the song as a whole, like I'll sometimes realize like, to me, that doesn't sound quite right. Could you like play eighth notes instead of quarter notes? Or like, could you take that busy part, like make it more simple, or like the reverse or something like that?
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, Jed, Karen.
No, that's okay. I was going to say, when she started writing songs, because this is a long time ago now, but it was 11 years ago or 10 years ago or something when she started writing.
No, it wasn't.
Was it? How long ago was it?
Well, yeah, I guess it was like 9 or I guess it was like 10 at this point. I don't understand. What is time?
That's kind of the subject of a lot of the songs. What is time?
Yeah, what is time? Yeah.
Sure.
But I was about to compliment you, Alicia. So
shut up.
She was like, "How do you write songs?" And I was like, "I don't know. You just do it." I was a little. I had a maybe slightly better answer than that.
I still don't know.
Yeah, but so she just started doing it, and she had like her own thing, like instantly. Like the first couple songs were first of all, she was writing mostly in minor keys at first, which is really unusual for beginning songwriters, because it's like it's harder to pull off, especially in pop songs. But she had her own thing like right away, like this very kind of almost, there was like this almost sort of medieval, like European music angle to it, with like a lot of you'd say melodic and harmonic minor and modal stuff that was in her melodic sense right away. So I saw that and I was like, oh, she's got a knack, like so that was exciting to watch, because I'd never gotten to see watch that before with somebody
develop
merged like that. I don't know what my point was, but
I mean, I can totally empathize, because when I was a kid, I played I started when I was about 8, and then I played the cello, and I was classically trained, similar thing. So I learned to read sheet music. That was my thing, and back then it was a very, what I consider now, a very restrictive framework. I mean, I think it was probably then it was a necessary framework, but it does have, and I gave it up when I was 17 because it never felt like it was my own instrument. I've been sort of pushed into it, and but interestingly, my parents died a few years ago, and it made me reconnect with that instrument, because it was my dad that sort of pushed me into it. So I got myself a new one, replacements after so many years. And I'm finding the same thing. So I'm, obviously I'm very rusty, or I was rusty. I'm really practicing, but it's the same thing. I think, if I want to break out of that mindset that I had, how do I do it? So the same thing that you're talking about, Alicia, of okay, how do I write things on my own? I don't know. I don't know where to start.
That's interesting, because I mean, like that was, I didn't have classical training or anything. So for me, I was making up songs when I was like 7, and I was eventually, by the time I was like 13 or so, I was like, I got to learn how to play some instruments so I can record these songs.
Record them, yeah.
So it was the opposite for me, where that's how I learned music. It was a necessity because I was already writing it. And I think a lot of I think I've talked to a lot of friends who grew up with learning learning music properly. I mean, I taught myself a bunch of theory too. So I still can't really read music, but I know music. Yeah. But it's funny, because a lot of my friends who grew up with classical training, they don't really know theory exactly. So they don't
I learned it formally, some of it, but then I forgot it, because whereas you, I think, know it, and it worked, you use it every time you're doing music. Whereas I think
I don't really on a conscious level, but
no, not a conscious level, but you understand it more integrally. So yeah. My mom kind of forced me to play violin from when I was 6, and then it didn't occur to me to put my foot down and say no until I was I was 17 or 18.
Exactly the same.
I tried to get my brother to play cello, and he did say I won't do it much earlier. But to be fair, my musical aptitude is much higher. I always love to sing, and I guess I sort of do. I always have walked around sort of making up little tunes to myself, but I didn't consider that writing songs ever.
I mean, that it is. That's what I think. A lot of people get hobbled by this sort of training, and even
I completely agree.
Even earwise, I had a friend who was a really brilliant opera singer. This was in college, and I feel like I've told this story a bunch, but I was so gobsmacked by it. It was crazy to me. She one day she was like, "Hey Jed, can you teach me some Ramones songs?" And I was just amazed that she couldn't figure out Ramones songs by herself. I was just I couldn't. I was like, what are they teaching you guys?
Yeah,
not even teaching you it's crazy.
I mean, talk about the theory side of it. I mean, in the UK there are kind of 8 exams. Same for the practical, same for the theory. I got through I passed all the practical ones, but the theory, I got to, I think I passed four. And four, it was either 4 or 5, but I struggled with it. Whichever one it was, I struggled with it. And I knew that I wouldn't, so I stopped there because I knew that I wouldn't be able to pass them. I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that. But that thing, about, writing a song which, as I guess in terms of chord structures, as simple as the Ramones, I had to do, in one of the exams, do something similar, like kind of write a sort of short composition, and I was struggling with it so much. And I think it's because you just learn one part, you don't see the whole picture when you're actually physically practicing,
And they teach you to read, but not necessarily to listen, So a lot of classical musicians I know don't have, their ears are not as good as what I would think they should be, like they definitely couldn't play jazz if they wanted to. I should also say, music theory is not in any way necessary at all in order to write music, I'm not like some sort of person who says that. I taught myself theory because I thought it was interesting, not because I thought it was important for me to.
It's important, yeah.
The thing, but then when I learned it, I was like, oh, I can change keys of songs like really easily this way. That's like little things like that.
So I guess while we're sort of touching on early days, I mean, from when you were growing up, I mean, what do you remember as your, I don't know, like sort of formative influences, things that you remember that sort of shaped, who you are now?
Alicia?
In terms of music?
Just anything, kind of like, people that you were hanging out with, things that happened, just anything that that you remember. Because I've done a lot of, like, myself, that sort of thinking back and like, why do I behave like this, or why do I react like this to that? We don't have to get personal or anything like that, but why do I react like this in certain situations? Things like that. But and some I can pinpoint, and others, maybe a combination of things. Others I just don't have a clue.
Well, I don't think I want to get like super therapy personal on this podcast. No offense, but I mean, I always tell the story. Judge has heard the story a million times of like the first time I realized like that I really loved music and was really excited by music. I think because I like grew up in a household where my mom like only wanted me to listen to classical music. I heard like some popular music, like, at friends' houses and cars and stuff like that. But yeah, and but in 4th grade, my friend had a Halloween party at her house, and for the first time during that party, I heard "Wannabe" by the Spice Girls, and I heard "Bop" by Hanson.
Yeah,
and both of those songs excited me so much that the next day I made my dad take me to our local music store. And all I had like in my room at that time was one of those like plastic Sony tape players. Like it was kind of cool because it came with a little microphone, and you could actually like put blank tapes in there and record yourself. But I bought those 2 tapes, and I would like just listen to those intently. And as silly as that sounds, like whatever was contained in those songs like really triggered this like excitement and like my journey into like non-classical music. And of course, I mean, classical music is a big influence as well. It's sort of just, I suppose, like in my bones or whatever. But yeah, I guess I don't know. And I like to think like in terms of the Hanson song, the harmonies were thrilling to me because I know harmonies now are like my favorite part of music. So yeah, that's my sort of whatever 1997 story, I guess.
1997.
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
When were Hanson?
What's
What?
Somewhere maybe 94, 95 were Hanson, maybe something like that.
No.
No.
Oh.
I'm Googling it.
He's looking it up.
It says Mbop was released on April 15th, 1997.
97.
So yeah, it was Halloween 1997. Yeah.
Well, for me, sorry to jump off Hanson. Not sorry. I love that song too.
I'm done.
I grew up with jazz and sort of my parents' hipstery taste, which would have been the 70s and 80s hipstery music, Blondie, Devo stuff. But also my mom was a jazz person, and my grandmother was a jazz musician, or a stride piano, which is like Jelly Roll Morton and Fats Waller, stuff like that. And my grandfather played in the church jazz band, played drums. So that's all on my mom's side. But I grew up hearing mostly really great music, which I was very, very lucky to grow up with jazz and grow up with contemporaneous music for my parents that wasn't terrible, which is the experience of a lot of people. So I'd never had any rebellion about boy, I hate Devo when I was 15. I'm going to go listen to Pearl Jam. Instead, I hated Pearl Jam, but and the Britpop stuff you were referring to. I kind of have a boomer soul when it comes to music, I guess. But so I don't really. There wasn't like a clear early memory of like conversion into music love, because it was just sort of always there. But I think really the biggest like life-changing event for me was hearing the Velvet Underground when I was 16 or 17.
Yeah.
My older brother had bought my younger brother the first album on tape, and it was in my younger brother's car when I borrowed his car, because he had a car before me, and it came on. I was like, "What is this?" I was like, "Well, you can do this. You can do this. You can do that with this, and you could mix that and this and that." And it was like nothing. Yeah, I mean, by then I had already been writing. I had probably already written and recorded several hundred songs by then, but that really set me on a path. And on, nothing really, no other music still has the same effect on me. That's still my favorite music, and I kind of consider everything I do for me to be Velvet Underground based in some way or another.
So the stuff that you're writing.
We have a no bells policy in Jeanines.
Yeah, she doesn't want any Celestes or glockenspiels in our music, so I'm not allowed to do what Stephanie says or anything. But what were you going to say? Sorry,
I was going to say. So the songs that you were writing before the Velvet Underground came into your life, what were they? Have you still got those? You still kind of
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I still remember almost every song I ever wrote from age 7 or so, which can be torturous. I've reminded of one. I'm like, oh my god. They were. I mean, I got into Bowie before Velvet Underground, so that was an improvement. So my stuff started to get a little cooler from that, because I was imitating glam stuff. But before that, I was kind of all over the place. Like I had a song. One of the worst things I ever did was like the theme from Poltergeist, as done by Fire on the Mountain era Grateful Dead. Right. Just very, very bad, shitty ideas. Executed okay.
You had to get the bad stuff out.
I did. I did. And the Velvet Underground. And that, I still made some bad music after Velvet Underground, certainly. And who knows, maybe I've only made bad music, and that's subjective. But the Velvet Underground is really what got me to shook out most of the bad taste, whatever lingering bad taste I did have. But as a teenager, go ahead. Sorry.
I think I always had if you think back to kind of bands that really sort of changed me. I mean, the first one was the Ramones, and then there was the Velvet Underground, the Jesus and Mary chain. And actually, just the other day, I was listening to Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, from I don't know if you from and they're obviously very sort of synth based early 80s.
Love that as well.
But they really have that kind of, I guess, kind of classical harmonies and sort of melodies, and that was like my partner said, I didn't know you were into OMD. I was like, oh yeah, I used to love them. I used to buy their stuff, and it was that connection. It gave me a connection to the kind of like the sort of rock music world with classical. It was almost like a bridge for me.
Yeah.
But the Velvet Underground as well, with those kind of like beautiful songs. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Psycho Candy, actually, now we're talking about Psycho Candy, which came after Velvet Underground for me, was also a really big one because it was so simple. It was such a simple and effective idea that also was a big moment for me hearing them.
Yeah. I went to see them in a town near where I lived, up in the north, in Blackburn, in when Psycho Candy came out.
Oh wow!
They played like a sort of 25-minute set.
That seems long.
Just looked very pissed off with each other all the way through it. But it was brilliant. But it was kind of like, it was just I mean, it was probably I was 18 then, so or maybe 17 when I went to see them. So I was kind of starting in my kind of gig going, sort of phase. But it was like something I'd never heard before. Even the bands that I'd heard, I'd listened to at home, I heard them on the radio. They were just very, very different, and that was the exciting bit for me. It just seemed quite subversive.
Definitely, and
but it had this beauty in it as well.
Absolutely, and like it had the DNA of the VU in it, obviously, but it was like didn't really. It was completely on its own. I also think even with them, like, if they didn't have great vocal melodies, then that stuff wouldn't have been nearly as effective. It was the fact that it had great melodies and it was this ultra primal, simple thing that was like really harsh. Like that's what made it. You can't. I don't think, because a lot of bands have done it, like tried to do the Jesus and Mary chain, and they don't have the melodies. It's just kind of like, like
And I think with the stand-up drumming to start with, at least, it was, again, that was kind of quite it's very sort of Velvet Underground in that that respect as well, but so like coming into getting into bands, playing live, I mean, how did you sort of approach that, and how did kind of getting on stage, how did that sort of make you feel?
Well, our first show, I was extremely terrified.
Cute.
I probably dealt with that with alcohol.
I think so.
I think that was in 2017. And I think we played, I don't remember very clearly, but I think we played pretty well. I don't remember it being, I don't think I personally have ever played very badly on stage. Like, I've definitely messed up, but not. Luckily, I don't get into the kind of thing where you mess up once and that means you mess up like every song after that.
Yeah.
Thank God, knock on wood. Hopefully that never happens to me. But yeah, I mean, I was definitely terrified. I was like, how am I going to do this? But sometimes you just have to like jump off the cliff or whatever, because it was something I really, really, really wanted to do. So,
I think you took to it pretty right away too. I mean,
I wouldn't say I'm like much of a front person, but luckily you don't have to be if you're playing an instrument. So
that helps a lot. Yeah.
And
I'm constantly making jokes, sometimes to Alicia's.
We've been working
on my stand-up comedy routine behind the drums.
We're putting in a joke quota. So.
A joke quota. I guess I've heard a lot of compliments about it. Maybe Alicia's getting.
We recently played a show. We recently played a show where we didn't play 2 songs in a row without stopping. So
okay.
I was maybe a little in my cups, so I was feeling extra, jovial.
I said no more than every 3 songs, because otherwise We're no longer playing a music set. We're just talking with a little bit of music.
It's a fair point. There's a balance for sure. But
it's a comedy show with a bit of music.
Yeah, exactly. If people are laughing, it's hard not to want to riff on that.
Well, so the thing on that is that you can go do a stand-up set yourself.
Yeah, but I hate stand-up comedy. I don't want to do that.
Well, just sit behind
awful. Have you ever seen that stuff? It's terrible.
Just sit behind the drums and do it. You'll feel at home.
You can be your own support act.
Be like a vaudeville thing.
Yeah. You have to play a song in order to feel comfortable making your jokes.
Yeah.
As long as you don't start fighting about who's going to headline and who's going to support.
Yeah, we'll have a song about that. Clown versus something. I don't know.
It's funny. I remember like one of my very very early episodes. Jennifer Finch from L7 said that she suffered from like extreme stage fright.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even in the kind of the heyday of L7, beginning of the 90s, extreme. You know, and she was completely sober. She kind of quit drinking and drugs. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I think she actually quit before she started L7. Before she started L7, yeah. But she said, yeah. So she was talking to a therapist about it, and the therapist said, "Look, treat your anxiety or your fear as an energy, to get on the stage."
Yeah.
She said initially she was like, not sure about that, but then she thought about it, and she was like, yeah, actually that works, and that's how she got over it. But it's interesting. You see somebody on stage like Jennifer, you wouldn't think.
I wouldn't think. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was very randomly I happened upon an interview with Bill Hader, the actor director guy. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Barry. No. The show Barry. Have you ever seen the show Barry?
Don't think so. No.
Anyway, he's a very funny, intelligent guy, and I don't go around watching interviews with that sort of people very often, but I don't know why I'm making all these qualifiers. See, I'm cool. I don't do what am I? I'm not on the internet just looking at interviews with actors. Come on, no. But he was talking. He had this story about being on set and Jeff Bridges seeing that he was nervous, and Bill Hader apparently has severe OCD, as I do myself, and a lot of anxiety, therefore, and Jeff Bridges was like, "That's your buddy, man. That's not to be afraid of. That anxiety, that's your buddy." I'm doing a Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
Did it. And he's like, "That's your friend. You got to embrace it and do something with it." So I thought about that a lot because I'm an anxious person. I guess I'm fairly comfortable on stage at this point in my life, but usually after I have anxiety afterwards about, was that stupid,
Yeah, I mean, I was. I guess some of these things are linked. I mean, I was like when I was a kid. I mean, and I still am. When I was a kid, my shyness and kind of introversion really, really kind of stood out. I just wanted to blend into everybody else, and so actually from the music point of view, sort of playing the cello, I was in the school orchestra, which is you're very kind of visible there, and I guess I got to live with it, and learn how to deal with it sort of over the years. But certainly, there are some situations that I'd just rather not be in. They just make me feel very uncomfortable, and like I just need to get out of here, and I get anxious, whatever. But for the most part, it's something I guess just life helps you to live with it, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
But so yeah, going on stage and then sort of playing and the the other kind of band members and going into and people in the studio, like producers and stuff like that. I'm just thinking about how you sort of work together, and I'm thinking perhaps I remember I was talking to a producer once, and he was talking about how to get the best out of everybody that's sort of in the room.
Yeah.
And because again, going back to this thing of people have different personalities and how that kind of works, with other people that you kind of bring in. I mean, is there just a kind of gut feeling as to who's right to to kind of work with you?
Well,
past album is the first time we've worked with somebody like to record us at all. The
yeah,
rest
it's generally been me and Alicia, and like Alicia plays rhythm guitar, and I'm playing drums and bass and other guitars. And sometimes I'd force her to put violin on it because she can play it, and then and I'm recording and producing and mixing everything myself. So it's really almost solitary thing. So this is the first time we had someone else record at least the basic tracks and the vocals. And it was great to work with Gary, but it was funny for me because I'm very much like, I have a real specific process and a real, I do things in a real specific way, and they're probably a little bit quirky, like everybody's personal thing that they've been doing for a long time is. So I had a lot of anxiety actually about having someone else in the room, but I also wanted it because I've just spent so much time on these albums, like by myself, mixing and overdubbing. I wanted to I'll have a little relief from that for once. Also wanted a really nice vocal sound, which we got because he has really nice mics. And
so we worked with Gary Olson from the Ladybug Transistor. And I would say like it was a great first experience, like recording with someone else. Like he's very easygoing and sweet. So he very minimally like directed us, but like he sort of left it mostly up to us as to like the order that we wanted to do things in, and like that, that kind of thing. So it felt very, and his like recording space is in his basement. So it felt very like comfortable and not weird. So
I've known Gary for like 18 years or something too. So it's like, and I'm a fan of the other stuff he's done. Sorry, Alicia, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
it's okay, Judd. The whole podcast is just going to be you.
Ouch. It was great to have someone else in the room. I'm definitely like, for music, for me, like it's more about production, and that's my favorite stuff is arranging, production, mixing. Like, so I don't know that I could ever totally relinquish that unless I really wanted to throw whatever, because it would be a totally different thing.
Alicia, you mentioned something about it, about his place sort of being a kind of comfortable place to be, which makes me think about generally how important your physical environment is to to kind of creating music, to giving you influences. You know, I'm talking about the actual town that you live in, as well as kind of recording spaces as well.
Well, now we both live in Western Massachusetts, and it's very lovely here. Like there's lots of nature. We still live in New York, where it's a little less lovely, but there's obviously different influences in your day-to-day life. I don't know how much direct influence that kind of environment has on the process, but because even if you're stressed, you can channel that into your music. So it's hard to say for sure, like in a direct way. I would say that like in our recording environments, we've often not been like extremely physically comfortable, and we just sort of have to make it work because we don't have the resources necessarily to be in that kind of ideal space. But and it can wear on you, like if you're trying to get something done and spending any significant period of time in your space for your recording. Obviously you would prefer to be as comfortable as possible, but overall we've made it work.
Yeah, the overwhelming majority of Jeanines stuff was done in a tiny practice space in Brooklyn of mine that had pretty primitive gear and often had other bands or people practicing nearby, and it was smoky, which was partially my fault. Partially my fault. I don't do that sort of thing anymore. But it was a tiny hot box with lots of noise, and it was not comfortable. It was very much an under duress situation. So we definitely made the most of it. But I'm glad to not be recording in such a space anymore. I think Alicia is too, although now our space has different new challenges. But it's overlooking a beautiful forest now. But it's like, we're not hearing like,
we're recording somewhere beautiful, but there's no plumbing. So
there's no plumbing.
Yeah, it's different challenges.
Yeah,
there's me thinking that the challenge was having nature as the distraction, but it's possibly a little bit less glamorous than that. But I get you.
Yeah. No, it is. It's always something. It is always something. It's funny.
I suppose.
Yeah, it's my fault.
And like, how much does do you rely on your instinct, like your gut instinct, either in your, kind of like, in your writing, in your construction of songs, or just in, in your life?
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. Because I like, so just give you an example. I have this, like one of my kind of I guess characteristics. I've spent a lot of life, I suppose, analyzing things, and I have this tension because my instinct is telling me to do one thing, and sometimes the analytical side of me is thinking, yeah, but this, what if you do that, blah blah blah, and I'm much better with it now. But there was a time when it was just like, it used to frustrate the hell out of me. It's just like, make a decision.
Well, yeah, if we're talking about Alicia would agree with this about me. If we're talking about my life, then I'm all analyze and no action. I don't take action. I have instincts, but I ignore them. With music, it's it's mostly automatic for me. I'm not really, yeah, no. So I guess I don't rely. I have instincts, but I ignore them or let them be destroyed by overanalyzing.
Right.
Yeah, I guess for music as well, it's much more, you kind of have to rely on your instincts unless you really do have all of that. Like, you could just like rely on theory and like write your song out.
Yeah.
But like, if you're writing the way that I write, a lot of it is like, does this work? Does this sound good? How do I feel? And I would say in my regular life also, I it's sort of a mix, but I can be impulsive. Like, I can, unlike Jed, sort of just get an idea into my head and go with it.
She definitely can do that.
I think it's fascinating where you have the kind of different sort of characteristics, but together it works. Together you work.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
We have kind of a Gracie and George Burns energy to us that, like, it's a little combative but very loving, and a lot of it is like the difference between someone who can take action and another person who can't. That's part of the tension. It's kind of,
So how do those sort of characteristics play into, say, when if you're if you're writing, for example, or you have an idea and that idea doesn't work, or you don't think that it works, and for example, you have to go back to the drawing board. Do you think that where you're more instinctive, that helps you in those situations to avoid getting frustrated too much?
Alicia?
Maybe I'm getting too theoretical. I don't know.
No, it's fine.
I don't know if, like, at least are you talking about music or in general?
Yeah, we can talk about music. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we've ever had a situation where something hasn't worked so much that we've had to like scrap it entirely. Like, there have been times where we decide not to like we do a demo and then we decide not to like, or actually put the song on something just because it's like not quite hitting us and we have other options. And there have definitely been times where, especially if Jed is working on a song alone, he'll like sort of go into like a fugue state and like put stuff on the recording that I think is just like unnecessary and like detracts from the song, and he'll have to change that or take it out. But like the only I mean, I guess the only thing I can think of is if the tempo was like really wrong or something. But like I guess normally we're able to sort of just like work through it like without having to scrap it. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question.
No, you are. No, if it hasn't happened, if it doesn't really sort of come into it, then that's all good. I guess you kind of thinking, okay, well, this is how we can work with that.
Yeah.
Would you either of you call yourself perfectionists?
Yeah.
In your work, yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, I totally am. It drives me crazy.
I'm really? Definitely not.
Yeah, no, I have a very specific. It's a little different because she's bringing in the the primary shape of the songs, but like once I am working on something, I have a very specific image of it in my head, like listening to a tape in my head. So it's becomes a matter of transcription to me, and like it's not very process oriented. It's about an end product that I already have in my head. So
right,
that can drive me crazy with perfectionism because I can't accept something not coming out that way. That's one of the good things though about me doing this kind of band where I'm collaborating with someone though. It's because I can't completely do that, so it frees me in a way. But even though it does still happen with mixes for Jeanines though, I do get obsessive about mixes, but no, it's not a great thing, but I don't know.
Yeah, I guess my role is kind of different because Jed is in charge of like creating the final product, and like I'm there as like the advisor, and like I'll tell him if something doesn't sound right, and I'll be there to be like, hey, like this sounds like, we didn't quite, this needs to be fixed or something. But and I'm not gonna like I still have standards obviously, but I think there are some things where I'm just like, my standard is like, I don't think anyone's going to notice that except you.
Right. And I'm always like for any kind of art, people, I think people are like, well, they won't notice, but their brain will, like sort of like they'll notice the difference in a way that they can't intellectualize maybe, so I'm always playing towards that. But Alicia is good at sometimes being like, Jed, stop. It's good. It's done, which I need because I'll just keep on doing it forever.
You just keep kind of playing around with it till you have your version of perfection.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't, our music doesn't sound super clean and, it doesn't like, you wouldn't necessarily know it like, because it's not hyper precise sounding, like, it's not shambolic either, but like, yeah.
I remember talking to Gordon Raphael about when he produced it was about when he produced the first Strokes album, and he said that the band, particularly I think of Julian Casablancas, the perfectionism that he had in getting a sound that wasn't perfect,
right? Yeah.
If that makes sense. He was really obsessive about that. And there's like just all this sort of playing around, and it would take months and months and months. And then eventually came back and he said, okay, let's just go with what we first had.
No, that's exactly what it is. Like, actually, like, I have another project called Mick Trouble, which is very much like a TV piece, sort of like late 70s, early 80s, like, sort of thing. And I'm going for a lot of the time, I'm going really specifically driving really hard towards the sound of a cheap recording, of a cheap record recording studio in, late 80s, or late 70s, early 80s Britain. So I'm being a perfectionist about imperfections,
about
slightly
totally
shitty drum sounds, and it's sort of, I'm a little embarrassed about it, if I'm being honest. Like, it's a little silly. It's a little bit, I don't know what this is, this, like hypnagogic sort of approach. Like, but no, I can relate to Julian Casablancas on that.
Yeah.
Point,
I don't know. I mean, I sort of quite like, I do quite like imperfections,
Me too,
and in live shows, if there's a wrong note, or you come in at the wrong time or whatever, because the way that I look at it as a watching the artist or listening to the artist, it for me, it kind of shows the humanity in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
That it's okay. Well, these are human beings. Make mistakes just like all of us.
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's kind of, well, it's sort of, so like in recording, I'm often going towards intended accidents and intended imperfections and stuff, which is the sort of embarrassing part. But live, it's like, I'm like the most I hate practicing. And I love it when I see a band who clearly hates practicing, who has really good songs. I love that. And so I'm actually the problem child when it comes to live, where I don't want to practice much. And if someone screws up, and I just laugh, so it's kind of funny. It's almost like I gave up any notion of even trying to achieve like a certain, like anything live. Cause it's like, whatever. But you also don't want to come out, it's not fun to see a band be really perfect. It's just not,
Absolutely. I completely agree with that.
You've gotten to get away with that because now, like, our bassist does not live near us, so we rarely do practice.
That's true, yeah.
I also feel like your attitude has, like, rubbed off on me, so now I'm like, I don't want to practice.
I think it has. Because when we started, it wasn't like that with you. Like, you were like, no, what are you talking about? And I'm like,
well, I still know that we need to, but once we're practicing, I'm like, how come this isn't over yet?
Yeah. I think if I was playing bass live, I'd be a little less bored with practice. But there's something, I always wind up having to play drums live in bands for whatever reason.
Because you're so good at it.
Because you're good at it,
thank you. But I think I'm just as good at bass, and I never get to do that live. I get to do records, not to toot my own horn, but it would be more fun. Anyway, if anyone's listening, I'll play bass in your live band.
Oh, I don't think you should have said that.
Well, I don't think he's going to get any.
You're going to get asked to play
about Jet Smith's offer of I don't think there's going to be.
You're going to get asked to play in a horrible band now.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh well.
It's going to be broadcast live, but there again, you got to start with it somewhere, and then see where the journey takes you.
No, my ultimate musical dream is actually playing bass in like a soul cover band, like a few times a week. That's all I want to do.
I feel like you could probably achieve that.
I probably could achieve that quite easily. Yeah.